How many of you know anything there is to know about the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or CPSC? I'm hearing some exciting news about them moving into electronic filing. So that would be a good thing. And I've had some good, friends from the commission that have worked with them and whatnot. But Lalo, I think today this will be a good conversation, and we're going to get right into it. But why don't you introduce one of our favorite folks that have been on the show several times?
Right. So almost every time we've had Jen Diaz on the podcast, she might be referencing or talking about something that might involve CPSC by accident. Maybe she gets out her little toys. I love that. The little things that kids can swallow or something.
Really be doing show and tell, Lalo. Can we pause for a second? I can do some show and tell. I can grab some stuff from my wall of fame and shame.
Go ahead.
Jen, I mean, you always, this is what's so cool is that it's never a dull moment, right?
Never.
It's like,
Never. Yeah.
Andy, if we want dull moments, we can retire. We don't have dull moments.
and it's something that's like, what you want is something where common sense applies, and then you look at what happens and you go, what were they thinking?
I like the way you call it, your wall of shame. So yeah, anyway.
I have a wall of fame and shame.
And okay, good.
Both. You never know what I'm taking out, whether or not they were on the good list or the bad list, because think about it this way. What percentage of companies do you think want to spend money on their lawyer or compliance before they start importing, doing their homework to say, who regulates me? What do I need to do? How do I get this right and make sure my labeling and testing and everything is perfect before I start importing, before I have
No. But you got to get to market. We got something here that's
Boom,
it's a good
Andy,
seller.
where's my sale? What do you mean?
Come on now.
You're not finding me a buyer immediately?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Exactly. So 10% of clients actually have budgets in place to say, what do I need to do before? So this is an example of a client that did. That was my 10% success. So what does this look like? It's adorable apparel, right? It's so cute, so cute. And what is it for? A baby, right? How many people in the world would think that cutesy patootsy kidsy clothes is CPSC regulated? Voila, it is. So it's one of those fun things that most normal people in the world would not think that CPSC applies to children clothing. But what happens? God forbid a kid is in flannel pajamas that can light up and ignite on fire. What happens? Other fun things. I have another fun example for you. Oh, it's heavy. Remember the hoverboards that blew up? This is an example of one of those fun hoverboards. So what we looked at were the battery packs in the back, and the batteries were glued together, like with glue, like hot gun glue. Like imagine taking AA batteries and just gluing them together and praying and hoping it would work. Well, hoverboards, for example, and them blowing up on you when you're using them, CPSC. So when you think of random items like bicycles, button cells, carpets and freaking rugs, things you wouldn't normally think of, but if a child could use them, general purpose items are regulated by CPSC and anything for a kid. So what Lalo's fondly remembering is I have a cute little toy motorcycle with candy inside and little handlebars that can come off. Well, those handlebars can become a choking hazard for little kids because what do? They put every freaking thing in their mouths. Because what else can kids do, So if a kid could swallow a handlebar and choke and die on it, God forbid, CPSC is there. So CPSC has typically been reactive, like not trying to prevent a problem per se, but has been reactive in the past saying, oh, this has caused a problem. A kid has gotten sick and or died from X, or the hoverboard blew up and now we need to prevent. So we're in a new stage, Andy, where CPSC is trying to say, before you start importing, I want you to make sure that you have your story straight, that you've checked our fancy schmancy regulatory robot. One of the best tools that you're going to put on this podcast as an insightfulness for everybody else. To me, the CPSC rocks in that they've made a tool that's user-friendly for the world and free. So it should take away the need for some of your compliance external people like me. For example, I have to yell at people to use the regulatory robot. But if I put regulatory robot, and if I put, and that's easily Googleable, this cutesy tootsy little outfit for a baby or a cute blanket for a baby, if you put both of those in, what happens is the regulatory robot will happily tell you exactly what the CPSC wants from you in order to import compliantly. That hasn't changed. That's not new news. That's old fun news. What's new is that one of the requirements when you go into the regulatory robot is that you have a certificate discussing and proving that you're not full of it, that you really did go to a laboratory, you really did get the testing that was required, and your product isn't going to blow up or catch fire, for example, or be something that a kid could choke on, or be a hazard to anybody. And that certificate is supposed to say who performed the testing. What is the item? How do I identify the item? Does it have a SKU, a product code? Where was it manufactured? When was it tested? Who tested it? What was the agency? What was the laboratory name that tested it? And CPSC is really specific. They have a very specific listing of the companies that you are authorized to have the testing of your item done by. That hasn't changed. That's not new. What I believe should be changed more specifically, and the issues that I've seen come to my attention more recently that I'm actually not a fan of, is imagine, Andy, before you start importing whatever the item is, you went to the regulatory robot. You did your homework. You were so proud of yourself. You went to one of those fancy schmancy approved labs and they gave you an amazing report and they said, you rock, Andy. Your product rocks. Go to market, buddy. And you did your homework, right? And you're excited to go to market. But then when the product comes into the US, CPSC pulls it aside and does their own testing in their own labs. And they say, not so fast, buddy. It doesn't pass. Those are the fun issues that I've seen more and more of recently. And CPSC has had to take companies off of the good list if their testing isn't to be trusted. To me, that's the worst issue you could possibly have with CPSC. You did your homework, you're pumped, you're a go-getter, you really thought you were doing all the right things, you got your certificate in place and everything's great. And next thing you know, CPSC's results can differ from yours. That, to me, is a worst case scenario. And unfortunately, it's something I've been seeing more and more common. So my feedback for CPSC, for example, is maybe some of the good guys shouldn't be good guys. Maybe they should have a 2-3 strikes and you're out rule. I don't know exactly what the inner workings are for CPSC on how they take companies off the list and how they're determining when somebody's so bad they need to get off the list. But I imagine for the companies that are working so hard to do the right thing, and you really thought you were doing the right thing, and then if you're importing something different than what was tested, that's a different story. But if you're importing the same model, same SKU, same batch, and you're getting a different result, So to back up, what's different now? What's different now is as of July 8th, that certificate that has your product ID, what type of testing you need, when the product was manufactured, who manufactured it, what type of testing was done, who did that testing, who can I contact if I have a problem. That certificate now has to be uploaded to CPSC and it has to be on file before you start importing. So what I fully expect is how many people are ready to comply with this requirement by July 8th. CPSC has been yelling about CPCs, these certificates of product compliance, for years. That's not new. But how many entities know what has to be on a CPC, what has to be on your certificate, how to make it correctly? We have helped countless companies with their CPCs and with their websites to have their certificates placed on them so you can showcase one location where all of your information is and with your certificates. But so many companies don't know this requirement. And what's going to happen, in my humble opinion, is come July 8th, when you have a mandatory e-filing deadline, you're going to have companies that say, wait, what? I was supposed to do what? Explain again. I needed to go to regulatory robot and understand that CPSC, who are they again? What agency is that? What do they regulate? That my bicycles, my bicycle helmets. They have a whole listing of 600 different HTSs, clothing, child chairs, carriages, lighters, drywall, fireworks, gates, jewelry. What do you mean jewelry? Imitation jewelry is on the list? Well, kids could use imitation jewelry as well. Furniture, pacifiers, toys, shoes, matchbooks, mattresses, all things you wouldn't necessarily think of. Because when I think of CPSC as I've been brainwashed, you think about things for kids under the age of 12. That's the brainwashing that we've had thus far, but it's also general use items, like things that are general purpose itself, things that the mass consumer would be utilizing, and nobody should get injured while using something. It's the thought process, you know? You don't want a hoverboard that you're having fun with to blow up on you. And what other agency is going to care about those requirements and or have safety requirements for the general public besides CPSC? So what's going to be interesting is CPSC stopping goods from entering the US, which is what I envision happening. Come July 8th, you don't have your fancy certificate on file. You never performed your testing. You don't know who CPSC is. For whatever reason, you've ignored the fancy webinars that CPSC has held and all of the Federal Register notices, because your average American probably doesn't know what the Federal Register is or how to look at it or how to go to CPSC's website and look at their fancy trainings that are all over YouTube. So now your cargo is held and you've got 60 days to figure out what's going on and whether or not you have the ability to get the goods tested, whether or not CPSC is going to allow the testing and CPC after the fact. They should, technically. If the goods were tested, for example, and you have your certificate, you just didn't put it in the right portal. I anticipate some of that happening. Oh, wait, I do have a certificate. I didn't upload it. I forgot to upload it in the right place. I didn't give it to my broker ahead of the entry. I envision a lot of that at the beginning. But what's nice is once you do it once, it's good for at least until you're ready to test again. So a minimum of a year when you're going through, you know, you're going through your testing and you don't have a new formulation, a new batch. So you have your certificate. It's more than one importation where you can use that certificate if it's the same batch, for example. You haven't done anything different for your product formulation. So what's nice is you'll have like your own fancy portal to say, here are my SKUs, here's my testing, here are my certificates that relate to this particular product. And then CPSC should let you go. Maybe CPSC will test your products and pull you aside anyways and go to their own lab. The example I gave you, there's no guarantee that CPSC won't test whatever products you've already tested to confirm the results are the same. Nobody can ever guarantee that.
That's the scary thing. The first thing is the fact that you can electronically file your certificate of conformity on, you know, with the agency, and that you've done everything and they've recognized that they accept it. Everything's fine. That's wonderful because it has been a paper process. And I can honestly tell you, and it's taken a long time for CPSC to get to this point. I am so glad they are.
Agreed.
But I can remember, you know, goodness, in probably 2013, we were sitting in a meeting and there was a proposal because not all the HS codes of a commodity are covered by CPSC.
Right.
Most
so
of them are in some cases.
Code flagging list to look at, but it's kind of like anti-dumping where they're like, we have a fancy list, but it's not dispositive, meaning you can't just rely on that list and think you don't have to deal with me, CPSC, but it's a really good guide to start. So I've given you guys that link. It's e-filing resources for importers, and you'll see the e-filing HTS code flagging list that has the 600 HTSs that CPSC is referencing. But what's really important is these are approximate, and the importers responsible for filing whenever required. And the list below is to help. This is what they say, to assist the trade community. And CBP and CPSC will coordinate to flag specific HTS codes. And the one fun problem is this is guidance. This isn't an absolute, because how many people misclassify their goods or use the wrong classification? So like the item itself may or may not be subject to the CPSC requirements. So CPSC has gone back to say, use the regulatory robot to start with. If you're unsure of whether or not your product is or isn't regulated by CPSC first. That should be step one.
Jen, what's important in step one is you're saying use that regulatory robot. This is part of the thing that Lalo and I just harp constantly. Almost every show, every other show, will bring it up. You've got to vet properly as far as your product, the people you're doing business with, the factory and all that. But when we're talking in this case, you're vetting the product is okay. You've designed it, you've got it manufactured, you got everything ready to go, and you're coming in. You also need to vet to say the regulatory requirements. Is this just a customs agency? Is it a other government agency such as FDA, agriculture, something like that? Well, CPSC is in that other government agency scenario there. So what you're in use, what are you trying to do and all that. So again, your step one is part of that vetting process before you start manufacturing and sending that stuff from the factory into the country. What you're saying is do your due diligence and let's make sure that you've got all the T's and I's, the T's crossed and I's dotted, I guess, right?
100%, Andy. I couldn't have said that better. To me, the biggie is internally, companies are so excited about sales, and I don't blame them. Who doesn't like to make a sale? A sale is exciting, but
Well, yeah.
compliance can't be an afterthought. And what we're seeing is enforcement just becoming the priority for all federal regulatory agencies. And CPSC is now utilizing the e-filing tool as a mechanism to stop a good from entering the US at the onset. And it's a great preventative tool because if you haven't done your homework, if you haven't gotten your product tested, and you should have, and you don't have a certificate to prove it, it's a great mechanism for CPSC to say, you didn't do any of your homework, stop here, pause, wait a minute, what's going on? But now you have delays. You can potentially have civil and or criminal penalties because CPSC has criminal proceedings that it's gone through as well. I mean, God forbid you are one of those people that didn't test an item and a kid wound up getting injured and or killed as a result of it. You better bet your behind that there's a criminal implication for hurting somebody at the end of the day. So CPSC, like all federal agencies, takes their job and mission seriously to protect the American public. And at the end of the day, the safety of whatever you're importing is your responsibility. So I feel like CPSC has taken a long time to implement this, and they've tried to give everyone notice, and they've tried to have their working groups and their pilot testing, and they've had years of having these beta pilots and few importers participating. And I think the world is going to be taken by storm because I'm not sure whether or not it's a getting the word out thing, whether it's a lesser agency that the brokerage and or trade community doesn't give its credence to as much. I'm not intentionally understanding why so many companies weren't excited about the pilot. Maybe less companies have products that are subject to the requirements than your everyday food importations, for example. But I do think CPSC has tried diligently to get the word out about this requirement for years, but I still will happily place my dollar bet that you're going to have a lot of importers that are in for an unpleasant surprise and that are going to say, I'm shocked. I had no idea this existed, and I had no idea I had to go through testing, and I had no idea CPSC existed. So what type of public relations / campaign any agency needs to put forth before they start requirements? In their mind, it's, we put out a federal register. We gave you years to test this. We gave you years to become a voluntary participant. We gave you years to comply. And at some point, the gig has to be up and it has to be implementation. So I think people start paying attention when their goods are held, when they incur demurrage, when they have penalties, when they see other flagship cases come to light where other importers have stops that are publicized, all of a sudden you have attention.
I will say that I am very pleased to hear that, this is a major step forward to, I don't know if you would call automated, but streamline the electronic side of this, of the CPSC clearance process. the other side of that is just like what you said, there's got to be an actual implementation at some point. Okay, here we go. The question would be, do you know by chance if CPSC has added any staffing to handle the exceptions? Because it's going to flood. That's the one area where I would say,
yeah,
they wanted to put down a rule, and then it's like, guys, you're not ready to handle the onslaught, and they've not delegated that to customs. It has to be CPSC personnel. So I don't know if they've added people or not, but
I think very similarly, we have these types of issues at various ports where the customs officers get excited and say, I want to intensively examine this amount of cargo, but you need the facility, you need the location, you need the ability to review. So what do you see at the end? Delays. So I anticipate there to be delays with this process as well. You don't have a certificate in place, and we know every agency is using some form of artificial intelligence. And it's really easy to flag an HTS as the easy mechanism for CPSC, but you don't think they're going to use other intelligence tools to make sure? They're going to look at advanced data as well and figure out who to flag, what to flag, and what other elements they're going to use, whether it's the manufacturer, the place of exportation, information in 10+2. Who knows the coordination levels? They're not going to give us all of the dirty details on how they're going to flag, but I very much agree in terms of the ramp up of staff that's necessary to have with your fabulous goals. And I think this is one where we're going to be, my personal take is I think we're going to be underwhelmed as industry in regards to how slow I think things are going to move in some instances. I think it's going to be no different than CBP having a whole lot of cargo they want to inspect and look at and having one facility to review it. I think they're going to be a team of reviewers, and I think they're going to use technology, but I'm very, very, very curious to see the backlog that will ensue as a result and what type of volume of cargo. And I'm really excited to see what type of information or reporting they're going to provide. It's been interesting to follow along with all the different dashboards that CBP's put out. And given how fancy the regulatory robot is, I'm hopeful that CPSC does something reporting wise to showcase like percentage of compliance or percentage non-compliant or what's at hold, or we'll see in terms of the stats that come out later. But I think there will have to be some sort of accountability or some sort of reporting itself that CPSC will come out with. But I do agree, Andy. I think it's going to be tough for the importing community to realize that their bicycles just can't come in willy-nilly without
right.
certificates. And I think there are going to be a lot of products that are going to be in the quagmire where the manufacturer and or the importer hasn't done their due diligence and doesn't think about CPSC the way that they should before importing. And I think it's another reminder that importing is a privilege, not a right. And every importer really should be doing an unfortunate massive amount of homework prior to importing, because there's a whole lot of obligations and responsibilities that importers don't necessarily think about until they're already in it to win it. And all of a sudden they're growing and realize that they have an issue. So will some entries sneak past? Probably.
Well, but overall, I think that this is something that is going to hit all modes of transportation,
That's right.
all modes. And I mean, you're ocean with the big containers of things that, chances are, and let's hope that people, when you're moving a big container of toys or garments or whatever, that they have done the due and have had that ready to go, because that's a huge volume. The rail, obviously, but air cargo and trucking is going to be another thing. Air Express is another one. Air Express would be the FedEx, UPS, DHLs.
Whatever your product is, I don't care what it is at the beginning, do your own compliance check via the CPSC regulatory robot, no matter what.
Yeah.
It's a free tool. Keep a record of your search and validation that CPSC doesn't regulate your particular product, because CPSC is there to ensure that a consumer product meets safety rules, bans, and so on. So first, going through the regulatory robot, do I have a requirement? Do I not have a requirement? Because not every product regulated by the site CPSC needs a certificate of compliance. It's only required for a product that's subject to a specific ban, rule, standard, or regulation. So the regulatory robot will tell you, is there a phthalate issue, a small parts issue, a flammability issue, whatever the issue may be that requires your certificate. And then you have two types of certificates, a children's product certificate, and that's where I want you to think of the cutesy apparel, the cutesy blankets, the products just for kids, a pacifier, a toy. Those are the CPCs. And then you have your general certificates of conformity. So think about mattresses, bicycles, helmets, household goods. Those are the products that need a general certificate of conformity. And the regulatory robot will tell you which laboratories are approved for testing. And then it'll tell you what type of certificate you need. And then the last point. So number one, regulatory robot. Do I have testing? Do I not have testing? Am I regulated by CPSC? Is there a specific ban or requirement? Number two, if I am, what type of certificate do I need? Am I a children's product or a general product? And number three, give that certificate to your broker immediately. Immediately.
Yes.
And when the broker's filing your entry on your behalf, ensure that it's uploaded with that 7501 in ACE immediately so that it's in the system. And if you want to validate and triple check, you have your 600 HTS codes to triple check and validate. And a really good time to look at your classifications, make sure your goods aren't misclassified to begin with, because this will be another way for customs to potentially come after you to say, wait a minute, have you been using the wrong classification all along? And then think about your duty liability. What if there's something else? What if you've been paying the wrong amount of duties and you owe the government money on top of this, on top of CPSC's issues? So broadly, again, regulatory robot, do I have a requirement at all? Period. Get your report, save that report, and save the day you did that report for your records. Two, if you do have a requirement, get that great testing lab that I'm praying you can trust. I hope only good things for the lab you picked. The well-known labs, I think, are the ones that will stand behind their results, I hope. And thereafter, get your certificates in place. Make sure you have the right one, whether it's your GCC or your CPC. And then give that certificate to your broker, ensure they're uploaded, and ensure you have great records, and your broker's your backup and they have great records for you as well. And ensure you have an amazing broker that communicates with government agencies and helps track what's going on with your entries. And if you do have a hold, ensure you communicate with CPSC to discuss the vast efforts you've taken to be compliant, because you rock and you develop your compliance program and you've got all of the steps in place before you start importing. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a GTC fan, then you know you're always doing the right thing. So you'll be the guys that don't get stopped, right?
Well, Jen, I have the link to at least the HTS list, and I also have the link to the robot. So I'll put those on.
E-filing resources is what I put in the chat also. So e-filing resources for importers, which has a great quick start guide. And it's got your HTS flagging list as well as some training videos. And CPS has done a great video as well. It's a 30-minute video on what's coming up, and I hope that they do more over time. And I hope they do more to promote them, because I think they're doing a great job. It's just a matter of getting the word out.
I agree. Well, thanks for coming on. This is very informative. It's one of those things that it's not anything new or a surprise. It's just something that I guess some folks tend to forget, or they're too busy stacking tariffs or whatever that they forget about this. And so so
there are too many things going on at the same time. So unfortunately, and if CPSC does stop your goods and/or after you, and you have to recall them and/or you need legal guidance, that's another story. But the hope is to not get that far. The hope is to do your homework in advance, because CPSC does have teeth and they have the ability to enforce. And I expect to see more enforcement as a result. And this is going to be an easier item for CPSC to implement and to stop the goods and to start enforcing. So those who are trying to hide or transship or evade, it'll be another mechanism that the government has as tools to stop those goods from coming into the country.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for being on our show. I always love it when you come on. We always have a good discussion, and it's common sense in this is what I always like from it.
Yeah, we try. God knows importing isn't always common sense. Sometimes it's a little difficult and fun because there are only 47 federal government agencies for us to get behind and get to know. So God forbid they would make it easy. But then again, I rarely get excited about tools and resources that are out there. But I will say the regulatory robot, I was pumped when it got implemented. And I still think it's one of my favorite tools out there because it's a government agency really trying to make importing a little less of a heartache. And if as long as you answer the questions, you get a full-fledged report. Now, if you have trouble reading the report or understanding how to comply with the report, that's the compliance person you mentioned, either internally or externally. But you can't say that CPSC is not trying to help you.
Jen, thank you so much. Folks, listen, we appreciate your listenership. We appreciate your support. Lalo and his team have always done a great job of pulling everything together. And like us, share us. Please subscribe to our channels and our shows and share them with folks. And we greatly appreciate you. So have a great day, everybody.
Love being on. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Jen.